Hello and good morning. Welcome to our webinar on lump sum funding in Horizon Europe. My name is Peter Hertwig. I am a head of unit in the European Commission's Directorate General for Research and Innovation, responsible for the business processes for implementing the grants in Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. I'm here today with my colleagues Bénédicte Charbonnel and Ulrich Gentschel, who will guide you through the agenda of our event. Coming to the agenda, we will start with a short presentation of the main features of lump sum funding that my colleague Ulrich Gentschel will give you in a minute. This will be followed by a panel discussion, and for this panel discussion we will also welcome two external participants from Siemens Aktiengesellschaft and from the French organization Armines. I will introduce them in more detail when we come to this part of the agenda. But we will also want to have feedback from you as the external participants of this event. So we will have quite some time for a questions and answer sessions. These sessions will be run via Slido, meaning you can ask your questions already now, starting from immediately, by putting them into Slido. Go to www.slido.com, and the code for this event is simply lump sum, everything together, no space in between. We will then also ask you to not only put in questions, but also look at the questions that might already be there. And if you see that you have exactly the same question or a very similar question, please don't put it again, but vote the question that is already there. And we will, at the end, in this question and answer session, go through the list of questions in the order of number of likes, so that we can at least reply to the most popular questions in that list. I think this is it already by way of introduction. I would now ask my colleague Ulrich Gentschel to start with his presentation on the main features of lump sum funding in Horizon Europe. Over to Ulrich, please.
Good morning. I'm going to take you through the main steps of how lump sum funding is working in about 30 minutes. We're not going to be able to cover every last detail of how this works, but we'll cover all the key steps. And of course, I'm going to point you to where more guidance and more information is available. And of course, we have the Q&A sessions for your more detailed questions, as Peter just announced. Let me start by saying that lump sum funding is really just a way to simplify the funding mechanism. All the main features and all the philosophy behind the research funding of the EU stays the same with this. We are not changing the levels of funding, the type of projects funded, or anything like that. All the horizontal parts of how programs are done and how projects are designed and carried out stay essentially the same. And you will find this feature throughout the presentation coming back. So why do we use lump sum in the first place? There's three main reasons. One is that we need to reduce the financial error rate. There's a wide agreement that research spending in the EU budget comes with too high an error, and we really need mechanisms to reduce this. Even more important is the simplification potential. The traditional system of using actual cost and reimbursing actual cost has been simplified over many years, but this has come, we have saturated this process. There is very little scope for further simplifying this system. It will necessarily remain to a certain degree complex because it needs to accommodate all the different ways of budgeting and claiming costs in the EU and beyond. So there is a limit as to how much we can simplify this further. This is where lump sum funding comes in, because it removes the entire set of rules that are linked to the obligation of reporting costs and resources. Also, it's a lot easier to use for beneficiaries with limited experience, in particular small actors. I'm coming to that in a minute. And then thirdly, we really hope that lump sum funding will increase the focus on the content of projects. taking away the focus on financial management and bringing more focus on what these projects are really about that we fund. Here you see another argument why small beneficiaries would really benefit from lump sum funding and how important they are in our program. The vast majority of the beneficiaries in Horizon 2020 were small beneficiaries, SMEs, newcomers that had exactly 1 or 2 grants at most. 75% of our unique beneficiaries fall in this class, while on the other end of the distribution, you have very, very few large beneficiaries that have 100 grants or more. Now, how do they differ? The very large beneficiaries, of course, the big universities and research organizations, they have dedicated staff, they have built the procedures and the administration necessary to deal with the complexities of real cost reimbursement, and they have, generally speaking, not much of a problem with it. On the other hand, we have all these very many small beneficiaries that have 1 or 2 grants in a 7-year period. And so they cannot be expected to have the experience or have dedicated structures to deal with this. So they need a system that works the first time that you use it without errors. And lump sum funding is, we believe, a big step in this direction. We have tested lump sum funding in Horizon 2020 in a pilot between 2018 and 20 with roughly 500 lump sum grants. And we had positive feedback from the users and the stakeholders, but there were also concerns, of course, and we are aware of those. They're not only concerns, there are also a number of misunderstandings which still persist even after a number of years of using the system now. So the main concern that we keep hearing is that lump sum funding comes with a higher financial risk, that projects would not be reimbursed, so that projects would end up paying themselves and not get the lump sum agreed up front. We don't see any evidence of this so far, and we also see no evidence that linked to this we have fewer newcomers or less ambitious proposals, or that we have less flexibility in grant management. But we keep addressing these concerns and we keep monitoring lump sum projects to make sure indeed these negative side effects do not occur. And then there are a number of misunderstandings which we try and clarify. In particular, the most important one is that lump sum funding would depend, or lump sum payments would depend on a successful outcome. That's not true. Like in any grant that we fund, what is essential is that the project is implemented. But whether or not there's a positive outcome, a scientific successful project, that is not essential for being paid. Of course, we are happy about successful projects, but we don't make payment dependent on that. And then maybe another one I still mention now is that partially completed lump sum projects or work packages cannot be paid. Of course, they can be paid, and in most cases, they will be paid if this is necessary. So to summarize, we know that we need to explain the system more. It's still relatively new. When you compare to decades of using the actual cost system, this has now been in use since 2018. So still internally and externally, there is a learning curve, and we are working with improved guidance and a series of events, of trainings inside and outside to clarify this. Lump sum funding comes in 2 flavors. There's type 1, where the Commission fixes the lump sum up front, and there's type 2, where you define the lump sum in your proposal. In practice, now in Horizon Europe, we are basically not using type 1 anymore. This has also been tested, but effectively all calls are now using the type 2. That is, you define the lump sum, you define the budget in the same way, much in the same way as is the case in traditional actual cost proposals. The one exception that we have is the ERC proof of concept scheme that uses a type 1 prefixed amount. Now, when you write a lump sum proposal, again, the key message is much stays the same as before. You use the standard application form, you present your objectives, and you describe the activities in detail per work package, as is the case in any other proposal. What is different is that you need to add a budget table with a detailed lump sum budget. That is needed to justify and to agree the budget that we will then evaluate and fix in the grant agreement. So here indeed we need a bit more detail on the budget compared with the traditional approach. And this detailed budget table is an Excel table that you find in the submission system, like the other templates to be used, and you need to submit it, you need to complete it, and you need to submit it as an annex to your proposal. How does this work? You can see in detail in the guidance that we publish on the portal. The link is here at the bottom of the slide. In a nutshell, what you need to do is you need to provide the best possible cost estimations for each cost category per beneficiary and per work package. So these cost estimations, they don't need to be accurate in the sense of costs that are declared ex post, that are incurred costs. They need to be estimates, and these estimates need to be reasonable and non-excessive. That is the main measuring stick for us. They also need to be in line with the eligibility rules, just in any other grant, and they need to be in line with your normal practices. So this is what you need to make sure when you fill in this table. I'm not going to go into more detail now. You will see the instructions in the table itself, in this Excel tool itself, and in the guidance linked here in the slide. Another aspect that you really need to pay attention to is the distribution and number of work packages in your proposal design. The reason is that the lump sum payments are linked to completed work packages. We are going to see that in more detail later. So the way you arrange your work packages and the number of work packages has an effect on your payments and on the cash flow in the project. So this is what you need to watch out for. But having said that, a work package, you cannot have endlessly many work packages. You still need to make sure that each work package is a meaningful part of the project. Coming to the evaluation of lump sum proposals. Again, very much like the evaluation of any grant that we evaluate, we use the 3 standard evaluation criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. What comes on top is that under the implementation criterion, we evaluate this lump sum budget, this detailed budget table. And our experts will look to make sure that your estimations are reasonable and non-excessive, and that they allow you to complete this lump sum project as described in the proposal. So the split between beneficiaries and the split between work packages needs to make sense in order to complete your project. Experts, of course, after this assessment may make recommendations, and that may be to lower the lump sum, that may be to cut certain costs where they believe these are not necessary. Then you will get the information of these, you will be informed about these recommendations in the evaluation result letter with sufficient information for you to implement these changes if needed. I should say that in practice, what we see so far is that the majority of lump sum budgets are planned well and that no changes are needed. But of course, there are also cases where this is the case, where we need to make changes, and there are also cases where the lump sum budget is really flawed, where there are major over or underestimations, and in this case, this would lead to a decrease in the score. Again, like in any other project where the budget is flawed, this can lead to a decrease in the budget and make it more likely that the project is not funded as a result. Grant preparation is the next step. Again, we follow the standard process to prepare your grant agreement. We use a different model grant agreement for lump sum grants. Of course, most of this model grant agreement is exactly the same as the standard Horizon Europe model grant agreement, but with the necessary specificities for lump sum funding. We will use the no negotiation principle as always. That means the proposal is principally, selected proposals are funded as is, but some changes are of course possible. For example, to correct errors, for example, to adapt to changes like changes in the consortium if necessary, or any other changes needed to comply with the rules, with the applicable rules for participation. And of course, it's used to make any adjustments required in the evaluation result letter, if any. And then in the grant agreement, we will include only the breakdown of lump sum shares per beneficiary and per work package. We're going to see in a minute what this looks like. What we are not going to include is your detailed budget breakdown that you submitted as part of your proposal. So that detailed budget is only needed to evaluate your budget, to justify it, and to agree it as part of the evaluation. Once this is done, we are not going back to it. We are using a more coarse lump sum budget, which is then the financial part of the grant agreement. And this is the only relevant part for the finances once the grant is signed. The detailed budget table has no function after the grant is signed. That's the main message here. And of course, once the lump sum grant is signed, we are not going to question the lump sum anymore, even if prices for goods and services change afterwards. So in your grant agreement, you have this financial annex I mentioned. This is Annex 2 to the grant agreement. Here is a sketch to show you what it looks like. You see in the rows the lump sum shares per work package and the total lump sum share per beneficiary. In the last column, you see the shares for each beneficiary at the end of each row. And then in the columns, you see the lump sum share for work packages and how it's distributed per beneficiary. So you get the total lump sum of 3 million in this example. You get it broken down by work package and by beneficiary. So here the message is, while we have this breakdown in the grant agreement, you are absolutely free to use this lump sum in any way you like. There is, if you like, endless budget flexibility as long as the grant is implemented as described in the grant agreement. We are not seeing how you're actually using the lump sum. The actual budget expenditure is invisible to the Commission. The Commission is going to focus on monitoring that the grant is implemented. However, if you want to change this annex, it's still possible through an amendment. Of course, any part of the grant agreement, if you want to change it, this requires an amendment. And in this case, you can absolutely change these lump sum shares between work packages, and you can shift between beneficiaries if this is needed and if you want to have this fixed in the grant agreement. Coming to the payment schedule, again, the same principle as we've heard before. It's very much the same as in actual cost grants. You have one pre-financing payment. The rules for calculating the pre-financing are exactly the same as in any grant, and the coordinator distributes this amount according to consortium agreement, same as always, same level, no changes. Then in the interim payment, one or more interim payments, this is where the mechanism is slightly different. We now do not pay the cost that you declare as eligible cost. We pay the lump sum shares, the pre-agreed lump sum shares in this Annex 2 that we just saw for the work packages that have been completed. The work packages that you declared as completed, that the Commission accepted as completed. And then finally, at the final payment, at the end of the project, we do exactly the same. We pay any remaining work packages that have been completed and accepted. And exceptionally, at this point, we can also do a partial payment for partially completed work packages. We don't see this happen very often, but it is a possibility, and it will normally be used in case a work package could really not be finished by the end of the project. And of course, at the end of the project, we'll also release the amount for the mutual insurance mechanism, same as always. Reporting and payment. So you use the same technical reporting template, the standard reporting template as for all grants, to report on the scientific and technical progress of your project. And then instead of financial declarations, what the coordinator does is he or she declares the work packages as completed or not completed. And of course, whether a work package is completed or not completed should be justified, should be clear from your technical report. If a work package that you intended to complete by the end of a certain reporting period is not complete because you have delays, it can always be completed later and then be paid later in any subsequent reporting period. And I already mentioned at the final reporting period, it's also possible to partially pay a work package if needed. I have a sketch here, I have a graph here of the of what this looks like in the portal reporting tool. You see a list of work packages and the lead beneficiary for each, and then the coordinator can select for any of these work packages in a pull-down menu their status, completed, not completed, and at the end of the project also partially completed. Already a word on the completion of work packages. We mentioned before, I'll see it in more detail in a minute, is that the completion is really not linked to a successful outcome. What we want to see is that the activities in this work package have been carried out as described. The financial report then, once this is declared, once you have declared which work packages are complete or not complete, the financial report is essentially automated. The financial statement will be generated automatically based on all the accepted work packages. So here in this example, we see work package 1 is complete, work package 3 is complete, but work package 2 and 4 aren't. Work package 5 hasn't been declared. So this would then lead to an automatic calculation of a payment of 700,000 euro. And here we come to the acceptance of work packages. Now that is, I think, a crucial part for the functioning of lump sum grants, and I think also some misunderstandings are around this topic. Of course, in general, work packages are accepted if the activities in this work package have been carried out independently of the successful or non-successful outcome of these activities. But these work packages, a work package can also be accepted if all the essential tasks have been completed, or when you carried out equivalent tasks, or when there have been deviations and you justified the deviations. And this, of course, is commonplace in research and innovation projects, that the work plan needs to be adjusted. So you have the possibility to amend a lump sum grant as any other grant, and you have the possibility to report deviations from your work plan in the technical report. There's a dedicated section on deviations, and you can make use of that and justify why you did something different. And you should really use these mechanisms, the amendment and the possibility to report and justify deviations, to make the completion of work packages feasible. So if a work package cannot be implemented exactly as it was written to the letter in the grant agreement, make use of amendments, make use of this possibility to deviate, to explain what you did instead, and then in all likelihood, with the same standards as in any other grants, as in actual cost grants, these changes, these deviations will be accepted, and your work packages will be accepted as complete, even if they have done something different from what you wrote in the what you have in the grant agreement. So that's a really important point. And then if in the event that you declare, despite all these best efforts, to complete work packages, because we of course want to see you complete your projects in full, if in the event that a work package cannot be accepted as complete, you will always then have the possibility to declare, to explain why in your view it is in actual fact complete. So the project officer will always give you the possibility to provide your observations in such case. But if the rejection is upheld, then the project, then this work package will not be paid at that moment in time, and you will have the possibility to complete it later until the end of the project. However, if we are already at the end of the project, then that would be a case where the work package that has not been completed despite best efforts would then be probably paid partially. And this would then be a case-by-case decision. We have very few cases like that so far, but then again, of course, this would be discussed with you to try and find a consensual solution. And how did acceptance of work packages look in practice so far? I mentioned we had this lump sum pilot with some 500 lump sum grants signed under Horizon 2020. These 500 grants, they had a total of 1,600 or so lump sum work packages, of which roughly 1/3 has been declared completed so far. And we see that 99% of these declared work packages have been accepted and have been paid in full. So you see the vast majority of lump sum work packages can expect to be accepted and paid in full. We had very, very few cases where this went differently. 5 work packages were declared partially, and then they were also paid partially as declared. And we had a lump sum project that was terminated for reasons completely unrelated to lump sums. And again, the project was paid partially as declared by the consortium. So far, we still haven't seen a single contentious case where the consortium and the Commission have different opinions on the extent to which a work package has been completed. And that brings me already to the ex post controls, or the checks and reviews of your project. Generally speaking, we have the same checks, reviews, and audits for all the technical and horizontal parts of your project. So the proper implementation of the action of your project can be checked in technical checks, technical reviews. This is the same as in any grant. And of course, we can also check the compliance with any of the non-financial obligations, such as ethics, such as security, dissemination, IPR obligations. Any of these obligations are exactly the same as in the standard model grant agreement, and they can be monitored and checked in the very same way. What is different, there's not going to be any financial checks, reviews, or audits by the European Commission or by the EU services. So you are not going to be audited on the financial implementation of your project. That's a key message, and that is, of course, a key simplification compared with actual costs. And you see this back here in the records that you need to keep. On the left-hand side, you see what you need to keep. That is all the documentation that you need as necessary for your project to show that it has been implemented. So it could be any kind of technical documents or publications. It could be the documentation that you require in any case under good research practices, for example, lab books, or any other technical documentation showing that the experimentation, that the activities have actually taken place. That is the measuring stick for the records that you need, and this is the same set of records as in any grant. Any grant, of course, any project needs to be in a position to show that it actually took place and that it was implemented by the beneficiaries. What you don't need on the right-hand side is timesheets, payslips, invoices, or any documents that prove the costs that were actually incurred in this project. Maybe I should add that, of course, this is only vis-à-vis the Commission services. In case you have internal obligations, national rules, internal practices that mean you have to keep any of those documents, then the grant agreement does not free you from these obligations, of course, but vis-à-vis the Commission, you don't need to have any of this. Here's an overview of all the resources that we offer to you. There's in particular now one dedicated lump sum page on the Funding and Tenders portal where we bring together comprehensively all the information available. I'd like to point out in particular that you can start with the "What do I need to know?" presentation in case you are new to lump sum funding, and the quick guide as well. We just released literally a few days ago a detailed guidance for participants. So this is the equivalent of the annotated grant agreement for lump sum projects. It's now available as well on the portal, and the link is included here in this slide. Otherwise, you'll find the reference documents, you will find links to the studies that have taken place, and you'll find a list of all open lump sum topics where you can apply for lump sum grants, and a list of future and past events, including the recordings. What's going to happen next? We have a few improvements in the pipeline. In particular, we are going to offer you a higher page limit for lump sum proposals from Work Program 23 onwards. We will go from the 45 pages for innovation actions and research innovation actions to 50 pages for the equivalent lump sum proposals, and we go from 30 pages for coordination and support actions to 33 pages in a lump sum situation. That means we have roughly a 10% increase. This will help you to accommodate a slightly higher number of work packages that we acknowledge actually happen in lump sum proposals. We are going to release very soon, hopefully, a personnel cost dashboard to help our experts evaluate your cost estimations. This will show the accepted personnel costs for each country and each type of organization in each country based on the data that we collected over the past years and that are based on accepted cost claims in Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. This will make the evaluation more robust and will generally improve the quality of the lump sum budgets. And then, last but not least, we are currently working on a better Excel tool for you to put together your lump sum budget and also improve the guidance that is part of this Excel tool. Also improve the compatibility with other platforms other than Microsoft Excel. And then in general, we will, of course, I mentioned already, we will continue to monitor all these lump sum grants and make sure that if we observe any adverse effects, we will take the necessary steps to steer against and to adapt the system and to update the methodology if and as needed. One part of that is, for example, that we started a month ago a survey among all lump sum beneficiaries to tell us about their best practices, how they actually handle, what's their experience with the lump sum grants they had. And we will, based on the feedback we receive, soon publish a summary of these best practices. This could certainly be then an inspiration for newcomers to lump sum grants to see how they want to approach it. Generally speaking, in the Horizon Europe work program, we are phasing in lump sum funding step by step. We had very few lump sum grants at the very beginning. We started with a few topics, 27 topics, still a very small share of the work program in 2022. And now with the 23-24 work program to be released in the next weeks, to be adopted and released and published in the next weeks, there we are going to have the first significant wave of lump sum topics where this system will really be used on a bit broader scale. The last slide, I'm going to show you all the lump sum topics that are still open in 2022 with deadlines in November and January 23. These calls are open currently. This is what is currently available for lump sum applications. And we are going to update this information on our lump sum page as soon as the 23-24 work program is adopted. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and we are happy to take your questions and discuss with you in the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Ulrich. We can now already come to our next agenda point. Before doing this, I encourage you again to go to Slido and ask your questions or to vote on the questions that are already there. We see that there is quite some interest, and the good thing is we are a bit ahead of schedule, so I hope we can keep this and have even more time for the discussion at the end. So coming now to the next agenda point, which is the panel discussion, I would like to introduce my colleague Bénédicte Charbonnel, who will guide us through this panel discussion. Thank you very much, Bénédicte. And I will also introduce our two external panel members. We will have with us, from far away, so to say, but still with us, Mr. Mathieu Reboul from the organization Armin. This is a research and technology organization in France, which works together with 48 joint research units and is at the border between research and innovation technology transfer. And this organization has also experience with some lump sum projects. I also want to welcome Mr. Reinhard Schwab from Siemens Aktiengesellschaft in Munich, who is actually here today not only as a representative of this company, but as a representative also of the Federal Association of the German Industry. And I understand that this association has a dedicated working group on administration of EU funding and is also discussing, of course, the lump sum funding. So welcome to both our guests, and thank you very much for joining us here. I will now hand over to Bénédicte for going through a first round of questions to our panelists. Bénédicte, please.
Thank you, Peter. So, good morning to everybody. And I propose we start this panel discussion with a really short introduction from our two speakers. Maybe we can start with Reinhard. Can you tell us which type of lump sum project you are involved, your organization is involved, and the federation you are representing is involved in? When did they start? At what stage of implementation they are now? Have you already been through reporting and payments? Could you tell us a bit more about your projects?
Yes, hello. My name is Reinhard Schwab. I represent BDI now, German Federation of German Industries. But the experience in this group is not that far. So I'll talk about the experience of lump sum projects of Siemens. A Siemens company has so far participating in 18 lump sum projects. That is to say, 14 lump sum projects during the Horizon 2020 phase. That started already at the very beginning, at the pilots in 2018. And some of the projects are finished and some are still ongoing. The type of this lump sum projects are not big lump sum projects, but lump sum projects where the lump sum is defined during the proposed phase. For Horizon Europe, there are 6 proposals on its way or already submitted. And we expect to start first lump sum projects at the end of this year or early next year.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
But, well, maybe we can ask the same question to Mathieu. What is the experience of Armin with lump sum? Are you coordinating some lump sum project? Are you partner? What is the stage of implementation? Have you been through reporting?
Yes, thank you, Benedict. So hi, everyone. I'm Mathieu Reboul from Armin. I'm the head of the EU Affairs Department of this research and technology organization. So for now, we are coordinating one lump sum project. That is an H 2020 research and innovation action that is called ORCID, meaning novel drilling technology combining hydrojet and percussion rate of penetration improvement in deep geothermal drilling. So ORCID was submitted in response to the topic advanced drilling and well completion techniques for cost reduction in geothermal energy in April 20. And this topic was part of the H 2020 lump sum pilot option or type 2, as presented before. So this project consortium is composed of 6 partners from Europe and beyond, because we have a Chinese partner in our consortium. And the EC funding requested for ORCID is around 4 million euros. The project started on January 1st, 2021, and for a duration of 3 years. And we are currently finalizing our first periodic reporting. And we don't have any other lump sum project in our project portfolio.
Mathieu, so as you both have experience with both the submission and evaluation phase of the project lifecycle, and also with more implementation and reporting, I suggest we go through this panel discussion in 2 steps, and that we first focus on submission and evaluation issues. And I will turn back to Reinhard to ask you this first question. Compared to other proposals you may have submitted, whether under Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe, what kind of differences did you notice while writing lump sum proposals? If someone that is considering to apply now for a lump sum grant under Horizon Europe, what are you going to advise him? What would be your recommendations?
Okay, we obeyed a more detailed planning of work packages and deliverables at lump sum projects compared to normal projects. That certainly has to do with a greater dependency between the partners, as the funding is paid after the acceptance of work packages. Therefore, the technical management has a little bit more or has more to do to detail more work packages and also more budgets for the single work packages have to be carried out. So there's an increase of work for the technical management and also a little increase of work for the financial administration at the proposal phase of lump sum projects. In this case, what would we advise? We advise that we have a precise planning of tasks and look at the partners that participate. Maybe it's good to rely on partners you know, but also, of course, you have to have new partners within the project. So it's okay, but I think the main issue is that you have a more detailed planning of the work packages as the funding depends on this. That's what I would advise.
Thank you very much. And maybe this enables me to really directly address my question to Mathieu. Reinhard has mentioned it, Ulrich covered it as well, this point in his presentation. I saw already that we have many of questions in Slido addressing the issue of liability between partners. There is the belief that with a lump sum grant, you increase the financial risk, and you have this really important question of the liability between partners, and that would lead to a tendency to build your consortium with partners you trust and you already know. Mathieu, can you tell us, compared to other proposals you may have submitted in the past, what was the approach you adopted while building the consortium for ORCID project? Did you indeed choose partners you knew already, or what was the things you were focusing on when selecting the partners that became part of your consortium?
Thanks, Benedict. So we are used to submit proposals in response to European Research and Innovation Framework programs. So classical proposal, I will say. But ORCID was the first project we submitted under the lump sum funding scheme. And honestly, we prepared this project exactly in the same way than all the others we are working on or we are coordinating. So from our side, we have not changed our practices regarding the selection of the partners. For ORCID, there were trusted partners from our research center, so it was quite easy to discuss with them regarding this. So there was already a relationship of trust. The idea we had during the proposal preparation is to keep the consortium around a limited number of partners to facilitate the management of our first lump sum funding scheme project. Since as said by my colleague, the technical management of lump sum project should be higher than the classical one, since there is no financial assessment of resources spent by the partners. So, however, if I have to do it again, what I will do is to better inform our partners, and in particular their administrations, that they are committing themselves in a lump sum proposal. And I will explain them in detail the specificities of this funding scheme. I will have made them sign a letter of intent to confirm that they know perfectly to what they are getting into. Because indeed, during the proposal, the grant agreement preparation phase, we had a lot of discussion with the partners regarding the joint and several liability that could afraid some of our partners, and we had a lot of discussion, and this caused delays for the grant agreement signatures as well as for the consortium agreement negotiations. So that's why I'm taking the opportunity of my intervention to call on the DESCA group or other similar groups to propose a model consortium agreement that could be dedicated to the lump sum funding scheme that takes into account this notion of joint and several liability.
Thank you, Mathieu. So now that we have, I think, covered already this really interesting aspects related to submission and evaluation, and we started to touch upon grant management because we discussed a bit the grant preparation, I propose now we go to a second round of questions, focusing more on the day-to-day life of your projects and the usual project management. And my first question will be to Reinhard. From your experience with past project and the experience of Siemens with the lump sum project you have already signed and run, what would you say about the management and administration of your project? Has it become easier thanks to the use of lump sum and the abolition of cost reporting in comparison to other standard grants?
Okay. During the proposal phase, it's more detailed, so it's more work. But during the ongoing project, the abolition of the financial reporting, of course, is a relief especially for the financial administration and also for the coordinators. But the technical part is more or less the same, or even a little bit more than and other projects, as there are more work packages to be reported. But so far, there had no real trouble has been reported about not completed work packages. The only thing that I've heard of that in the early phases of lump sum projects, sometimes the project officer was a bottleneck concerning the acceptance of work packages that already have been completed, because the project officer has to check this, and sometimes this led to a delay and in consequence to a later payment. So after all, you can say the abolition of the financial reporting and possible audits is a relief, basically on the financial administration. Technical part, it's not a very big relief, I dare say. And some managers still fear that there may be some issues if work packages are not completed due to maybe the failure of one of the partners working on the work packages. But as we've seen on the slides, it's also our experience that there are not many work packages that so far have not been accepted. So we also ask our managers whether they are content with the lump sum projects, and the managers that participated in lump sum projects are content with this and speak in favor of them. The only thing I want to mention, all our lump sum projects have been part of joint undertakings of Shift to Rail or Europe's Rail, and in this undertakings, the success rate of our proposals always have been very high. So the more work at the planning phase of the projects was not a very big issue, because this work wasn't lost in most cases. In normal projects, the success rate often is considerably lower, and maybe this the more work at the proposal phase could be an issue. Then we will see and have our experiences there.
Thank you very much. And to continue on the question of project management, I will now ask you, Mathieu. As you have told us, you just have finished a report for the first time in the framework of the ORCID project. Can you tell us a bit more? Would you say that the reporting for your project became easier? And what is your experience with declaring the completion of the work packages at the end of this first reporting period?
Yeah, thanks, Benedict. So I have to confess that the reporting was really much easier than classical H2020 projects, since no cost calculation is expected, and it is really good for us. So as you might know, periodic reports of lump sum projects are composed of a technical report, a classical one, such as for the classical H2020 project, and of a financial report. So the financial part of the report was straightforward, since it consisted in declaring work package that were completed first during the period, and then sign a financial statement that have been already prepared by the system, automatically prepared by the system to declare the lump sum shares of the partner that were involved in the completed work package. So it was really easy. Partners just have to sign the financial statement and submit. No cost to be calculated at all. And for me, this is a major simplification from a beneficiary point of view. In ORCID, we only had one WUPI out of 9 that ended at the end of the first period. And it was not the most challenging one. So we will see later on during the final phase of the project how is it going, but it was this work package that was completed was declared like this in the report, and it has been assessed as completed by ORIC project officer and the reviewer after the review meeting. So we should be paid of the lump sum shares declared for this work package shortly. However, if I have to do it again, so to prepare a lump sum proposal again, I will try to change a bit the work plan to synchronize the end of the WUPIs with the end of reporting period, even if it means splitting an actual work package of ORCID in 2 distinct work packages. This could help to contractually act the completion of the work done at the end of the first period and be paid more regularly. And for the supporting work packages that are lasting during all the project duration, such as the management one or the dissemination and communication work package, I will propose as many work packages as reporting period of the project. For instance, if the project is divided in 2 periods, I will have one work package dedicated to management activity for the first period only, and another one with the same description for the second period. And in the same objective, so to act the completion of the work and be paid at the end of the period. So that's my point of view after 18 months of ORCID implementation.
Thank you very much. So that's the end of the questions we have prepared for you regarding your experience. But of course, we would like you to remain with us for the Q&A session, because I assume there are a lot of questions from the audience that are really asking about your practical experience more than the theory we have covered already. And I will give back the floor to Peter for moderating the Q&A session.
Thanks to all of you for this interesting panel discussion. And indeed, please stay with us. And I will see what questions appear and will assign some of them directly to you. But please also just take the floor when you think you have to contribute to one or the other of our questions. So we have, for the moment, 164 questions. I'm sure that we will not be able to go through all of them, but we have quite a bit of time, more than an hour now, for the questions and answers. And as I said, we go through them in the order of number of likes. The first one I see here has 105 likes, and I will read it out. Usually the Commission recommends having not too many work packages, for instance, around 6. How many work packages would you then accept for lump sum proposals as a maximum recommended? Maybe we start with replying from our side here, and possibly Ulrich will give it a try. But if you then have something to add, Reinhard and Mathieu, please don't hesitate.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I think Mathieu already summarized it very well. This is also very much in line. His intentions are very much in line with what we expect and what we recommend. You can't have an endlessly high number of work packages. You will not hear a finite number, because that depends, of course, on the size of the project. For example, twice as many work packages would be perfectly reasonable, because this is what you get if you take the horizontal work packages like management and you split them by the number of reporting periods, and then maybe one or other technical work package still needs to be split as well. Maybe I need to add that when you split a work package, you don't need to repeat the content of that work package completely. So in the case of management, the content of management in reporting period 2 and 3 would be the same.
Okay. Reinhard, Mathieu, do you want to contribute?
Well, it's true that we have more work packages in our project so far because we have more in mind also the financial flow. Some work packages are split because we would expect funding after the first reporting period, and some work packages are also split because of the partners. It's a little bit you look who is in one work packages as the funding depends on this. This could add to an enhanced number of work packages. But of course, I don't think it's doubling the work packages, but adding some percent more work packages.
Okay, thank you very much. Mathieu, you don't see...
Yes, perhaps just to say that the objective is not to create artificial work packages. They should be linked to the work plan and to the objective of the project. So to the milestone, I will say, in the deliverables. But I think it's quite easy to split work packages according to the reporting period and to the deliverable and milestone we planned. So as I said, if I have to do it again, I will do it like this.
Okay. We go to the next question. How will you determine that a work package has been fully completed? Is this based on the deliverables only, or are there additional criteria? And maybe we start the reply with giving you both the floor to report on your practical experience. So what was the criterion for instance, in your case, Mathieu, for your one work package that was accepted so far?
So I think there were three criteria, I will say. First, the submission of the periodic report. Second, the submission of the deliverable. And third, the project reviews. And the project officers and the reviewers told us directly during the review that the work package were completed because we fulfilled the objectives, we submitted the deliverables, and the report was convincing. So it was quite easy, I will say. But as I said, it was not the most challenging one, and we will see later. But for now, I'm happy with that.
Okay, Benedict, can you maybe from the theoretical side add a bit to this?
So indeed, we often have the question, so it means that I will be paid upon the successful delivery of my deliverables. Well, of course, for your work package to be completed, the deliverables that are part of this work package needs to have been submitted and accepted. But that's not the only element, because a work package is, of course, more than the sum of the deliverables that are composing it. And you probably know that the Commission is also trying to limit the number of deliverables, and that we don't want to have an artificial increase of the deliverables just for the sake of having something submitted in the system. So as Mathieu said, of course, you will have to submit your deliverables, they will have to be accepted, but in your technical report, you will also have to explain why all the activities you have been describing in your grant agreement as part of a work package have indeed been implemented during the reporting period. So that's, of course, on this basis that the project officer will perform his assessments.
Ulrich, you want to complement?
I want to add that the possibility, because it's really important that you can deviate. So in case you have a number of deliverables linked to your work package and not every deliverable can be submitted and completed, of course, you can explain, and this happens also in actual cost grants, why a deliverable could not be completed in time and what you did instead. That is also part of the possibility to amend the work plan to make completion of your work package feasible.
Okay, I think we turn to the next question, also a very popular one. Under which circumstances will unfinished work packages be partially paid at the end of the project? Will the Commission choose the beneficiaries which receive the payment? It's two questions, actually. On the first part, I think Ulrich has already given some indications in the presentation, but maybe you want to add to this.
Yeah, I think it's really, this will be and is and will remain an exceptional case. We've seen very few cases so far and no contentious case so far of this happening. Effectively, when an essential part of a work package is not complete. And we see that there has not been the effort, there was no best effort to complete this work package and essential parts are missing. This would be the case when it would not be fully paid. And now the question on who of the beneficiaries. Now this is a case by case, because if we also indeed included some examples for that in the detailed guidance just released a few days ago. So you can have a case where the project is like a horizontal part of the project has not been delivered. This would be a grant reduction like in any other cost, in an actual cost grant, and you have a horizontal grant reduction which affects the whole consortium. So how this is then distributed depends on your consortium agreement, because the consortium is collectively responsible for delivering it. However, if you can also have a case where it's very clear which beneficiary is at fault, and then we could very well decide to not pay this particular lump sum share for a defined work package for a defined beneficiary. So this depends on the case in hand.
Okay. On the second part of the question, will the COM choose the beneficiaries which receive the payment? Benedikt, do you have the
Well,
answer?
I guess that's more or less what Ulrich explained just now, yeah.
I mean, we could say the payment is, of course, always received by the coordinator, but it could well be that in the Commission decision on how much this work package, the payment for this work package will be reduced, there can either be a clear indication which beneficiary is responsible for the reduction, or it could be a clear indication that this is for the consortium as a whole. That depends on the reason for which the work package has been reduced.
Yeah, maybe to add to this, in that context, I think the consortium agreement plays a role, because the consortium agreement is normally there for clarifying such contentious issues and how such kind of conflicts, which will then be conflicts within the consortium, are to be solved. What are the mechanisms and instances to come to a conclusion? And indeed, the involvement of the funder, the commission or executive agency here is limited. We pay to the coordinator. We may have indications in our decision for partially paying on who is, so to say, responsible for this partial payment, but we will not check or we will not prescribe who receives how much. That is an internal affair of the consortium. Okay, let's go to the next question. If the pre-financing is, for example, 60%, the lump sum to be paid for each work package will be 40% of the originally requested amount, question mark. I think this is a misunderstanding on our basic payment provisions, and this is not linked to the lump sum funding. So we should explain here that the pre-financing that we pay is not cleared by interim payments. So in a certain sense, the pre-financing is pushed through the whole project until you reach the 90% payment ceiling. So also in real cost projects, when you report costs and these costs are accepted, they are paid in full. So there is not a consideration that you have already received an amount of pre-financing and then only the rest is paid. That's not the case. So, and that's exactly the same in lump sum funding. So you receive a pre-financing also in the lump sum funding. You come to the first reporting period. You report some work packages as completed. They have a lump sum amount assigned, and this lump sum amount will be paid on top of the pre-financing that you have already received. And there is no overlap between the two. Of course, we have this payment ceiling in Horizon 2020 of 90% of the total grant. When you reach this at a certain reporting period, then the payment will be capped at these 19%, and the rest will be paid only at the end with the payment of the balance. Okay, next question. How do you control that beneficiaries will not have profit with the lump sums? Who wants to?
Well, first of all, we do an evaluation, and you have competition between different proposals. So like in any other grant, we expect that you have a reasonable budget, you have a budget envelope. Most of the time we hear that the funding that we give for big projects is, if anything, not enough, so that people need co-financing and they are far away from making a profit. And then second, the concept of profit is something that in the lump sum doesn't really exist. So it's inbuilt in the financial regulation. This is a new instrument, lump sum funding, where we have a certain methodology to agree upfront the amount assigned to a given grant. And you are obliged to, you're responsible for implementing and delivering that project. What you do with the lump sum and how you actually implement and how you spend the lump sum is irrelevant for us. And the methodology behind the lump sum is expected to make sure that there is no profit. I'm not sure if we want to go in more detail or give examples or...
Could maybe give one or two examples. So for instance, if in your budget in the proposal you have the purchase of a piece of equipment and there is a certain price at that moment, and then for one or the other reason this piece of equipment becomes cheaper when it's actually purchased, we will not even see this. And this will not be a case for reducing the grant, because we say that the lump sum is fixed with the signature of the grant agreement, and it is, so to say, inherent to the lump sum funding that the non-profit principle is deemed to be complied with by the method of fixing the lump sum, to say it like this. Okay, next. Yes.
Maybe in actual practice, in this example of Peter, you always have in all grants, you will see that one part is cheaper and another part is more expensive. And overall, you will still have to comply with all the responsibilities of implementing this grant inside the envelope that was agreed up front. So overall, even if one or other part gets cheaper, very likely some other part might get more expensive, and overall, there's no profit.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Again on work packages. Splitting work packages, referring to slide 8. Can we choose the reporting periods? If so, how many? How to describe split work packages in the table 3.1b of the templates to save space? Maybe Mathieu, because you have experience with this, you can start answering.
Yes, so first I have to say that we did not did that. We prepared our project as a classical one, but my experience regarding this will be to split the work packages, especially the management one and the communication one. I said earlier, I think we can copy and paste the work packages, even by saying that the work package 2 for management is the same than the 1, I think. But I think we cannot choose the reporting periods. We can choose the duration. And classically, I would say that for a 36 months project, we can have 2 reporting periods, sorry. And for the longer project, we will have 3. So that's the how could I say that, the basis principle. And then, honestly, I don't know how to say much about that, but it is clear that we have to split work packages.
Okay. Anyone here wanting to contribute?
Maybe just to confirm that indeed you cannot freely choose your reporting periods. The standard length of a reporting period is 18 months, because we don't like to maximize the number of reporting periods, we like to minimize it. But indeed, so for a 36 months project, you'll have 2, and for a longer one, you have maybe 3. So there is limited choice for the number of reporting periods, but for the way you split work packages in the table 3.1b, indeed, if the management work package was split, the second and third management work package can just refer to the first, and you don't need to repeat the content. So you could just have management 2, same as management 1, to save space.
Thank you. Next question. How would the financial audit process for such projects look like? I think the answer is, in principle, very easy.
Exactly.
Benedikt.
It would not. It would not be just that's the concept. We are not interested in actual cost at any moment, so as a consequence, we will not have financial audits. Of course, we will have audits focusing on other aspects of the grants, but this will be taking place exactly the same way as it is taking place for an actual cost grant when a technical audit is taking place, for example.
Maybe we should add one aspect. You will see in the lump sum model grant agreement that there is a reference to checks also of financial nature. But this reference is not for our, so to say, standard financial audits that we do in real cost projects, where an auditor of the commission or of an audit firm comes and checks the timesheets, the invoices, everything related to the costs of your project, because this cannot even be, because you are not obliged by our grant agreement to keep all this documentation. But what with this article in the grant agreement is deemed more for checks, for instance, of OLAF in case of major suspicions of potential fraud. So you will, of course, as Ulrich also said in the presentation, have to comply with all your national legislation and with your internal rules of your organization. And if then there is such a suspicion that there is a serious irregularity and people come and check, they might also check, for instance, employment contracts of staff or salary slips of staff. You know that in the reporting in Horizon Europe, we will now ask for the identity of the researchers involved. So if then such checks happen and they see that there was never somebody employed with that name, you will have a problem. But saying again, the normal financial audits linking the activities in your projects to the actual costs incurred will not happen anymore. Okay, we go to the next question. I don't really understand, as the funds can be moved from one work package to another, when is an amendment required? Ulrich, do you want to start?
Yeah, I tried to answer that in the presentation. You don't need an amendment. The amendment is required if you want it, if you like. Indeed, the funds are not, well, I should maybe say the funds are not moved from one work package to another. The funds in the grant agreement, we keep a certain payment schedule, and we will use that payment schedule, Annex 2, for the payments in the way that is the last agreed version of the grant agreement. So we will pay you according to that Annex 2. But if with this payment schedule you are fine and you can complete the project, then there is never a requirement from our side to amend it. The need could arise on your side if you want to have legal certainty of these lump sum shares and how they are split between different beneficiaries, for example. And then in that case, that would be, or of course, if you have major changes between work packages, which may necessitate that when you change the technical description of a work package in a major way, maybe you increase one and you decrease another one, then indeed we would also expect that change in the technical description to be accompanied by a change in the amount of funding assigned to each of these work packages. Maybe one last comment is that work packages can generally only be amended in terms of technical description or in terms of the lump sum share assigned to them if they have not yet been declared as complete and paid. A lump sum work package that you have declared completed and that we have paid in full is over and out and will not be part of a future amendment after that.
Maybe to add a bit to this, the question was about also shifting funds between work packages. You know that there is this table in this lump sum grant agreement giving the split of the amounts by work package and by beneficiary. Of course, from our side, no amendment is needed at all if you do these work packages. You might ask yourself for an amendment because this table also defines the limits of financial liability of all the partners. So each partner is only liable for the amounts that are indicated in this table that is an annex to the grant agreement. So if you think you need to be 100% on the safe side, if you move a bit budget between the different things on this liability question, you can ask for an amendment, but for our purpose, it's not required. Okay, next question. Are lump sum projects already finished? Final reporting, final payment already realized? How many? I give the floor first to Benedikt for the general reply, but then I also understand that Reinhard, you have already some examples of finished projects and you can comment on this. Benedikt, you start.
So indeed, under Horizon 2020, we have signed more or less 500 grants using lump sum, and already quite a number of these projects have already finished. This is a case of the project, of course, with a shorter duration. So we have a good number of projects that were signed under the ERC proof of concept that have been fully implemented, finished, and paid. We also have a project with a short duration in the framework of some InnoSoup and some FedOpen topics that have been also fully completed, reported already, and have been paid. And those projects are all embedded in the statistics Ulrich showed you during the presentation about the status of the work packages. And I can tell you that the wide majority of these projects have been completed fully, declared as fully completed, and paid fully accordingly. And we have really a few examples where the consortium didn't fully completed the work package, and that was partially paid. But yeah, the experience is showing that for the wide majority of these projects, everything went fine, and nothing was creating any controversy so far. But maybe Reinhard can give a bit more input and also interesting experience, because I would say that the Shift Rail projects are those projects that are this typically big collaborative projects that you might be interested to hear more about. So maybe Reinhard can give more insight.
Yes, it's true that on our part, the Shift to Rail projects have been quite big projects. And the very first lump sum projects started 2018, and there are some that are already really finished and the final payments have been made. But I cannot say how many these are. As I've told, we had 14 lump sum projects under Horizon 2020, and I guess maybe 3 to 5 are already finished, but I do not know the real figures. But if there would have been really big issues or problems, I would know that, because this would have been forwarded to me. So I think no real issues at the finished projects.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I want to add that there is no difference in how we handle this at interim payment and at final payment. So as you saw in the stats, 99% of the declared work packages have been accepted and paid in full. So that of course covers all the interim and final reporting periods that we've seen so far. And we don't expect any different behavior in the future final payments than the behavior that we saw in the interim payments so far.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Again on budget flexibility. You say endless budget flexibility, but the lump sum MGA says budget flexibility does not apply. Changes to the estimated budget always require an amendment. What is correct? Can you...
No, I think it's, I totally agree that the lump sum model grant agreement is confusing unless you're very, very experienced in this regard. The meaning of this in the lump sum model grant agreement is budget flexibility as we know it from the actual cost system doesn't exist. And that is, the reason is that there are no actual costs in lump sums. So there's also not budget flexibility in the sense that you have it in an actual cost grant, where you indeed budget flexibility means that you can shift budget between cost categories. But this doesn't apply. It means the lump sum doesn't know cost categories in this sense, but this does not limit the way you spend the lump sum, which is entirely up to you and invisible to us. So it's correct to say that you have full budget flexibility. We are considering in the next version of the lump sum model grant agreement to word this differently to avoid this confusion. And again, the second part, the estimated budget always requires an amendment. Again, it means if you want to have this estimated budget changed in the model grant agreement, that requires an amendment. In a way, this goes without saying, because anything in the model grant agreement that you want to change requires an amendment, including Annex 2, which is this lump sum breakdown. But as we explained before, if you are carrying out the project, if you're confident you will deliver your project, there is no reason for you to actually do this, because in the end you are going to get the full lump sum.
Okay, we move to the next question. Can the consortium agree within the consortium agreement an allocation of funds which differs from that submitted in the Excel once the project is implemented? Quick reply, Benedict.
Well, first, regarding this Excel is what you used to define the amount of your lump sums. This is not part of the grant agreement. What we have in the grant agreement is a breakdown of the lump sum per work package and per beneficiary. This is what we have, and we are going to pay according to what is in this lump sum breakdown per work package and per beneficiary. And this is linked to what we've said earlier. We are going to pay according to that schedule, but then as part of your consortium, you are free to organize yourself the way you want, and that's your internal business. The Commission, the agency, will not have a look at what are the provisions of your consortium agreement and what are your internal arrangements.
Yes, so the plain reply to this question is yes, it can. Next question. Where can we get return on experience from project coordinators or partners who participated in finished lump sum projects? So we have one representative here today with us. So Reinhard, I don't know whether you would be available for bilateral conversation afterwards. But otherwise, we have, of course, ourselves the list of lump sum funded projects, and we have also information on all our funded projects on our funding and tenders portal and on Cordis. So in principle, we can make have we already made this list of funded projects under the pilot somewhere available? If not, we can do this for sure.
Okay, I don't think it's public so far, a full list of lump sum projects, but I think,
if you are a bit of a detective yourself, you can of course check the Horizon 2020 work program, identify those topics that are using lump sum, and go to Cordis and check the projects that have been selected under those topics.
But I think we take the point, and we will prepare such a list. That is not. We can of course not disclose the contact details of coordinators because of personal data protection. But once you have the list and the beneficiaries and the coordinators in terms of organizations, you will certainly find a way of contacting these people. Okay, point taken.
Okay, we'll publish that, but I would also come back to this survey on the best practices that we have just started. So if there's any beneficiaries of lump sum grants out there and listening, you should have gotten an invitation to participate in that survey. Please reply, please tell us how it's going and what your best practices are. We are going to summarize this and publish it on our lump sum webpage soon after we close the survey. And then of course I can already announce we will do a follow-up of the study of the assessment that we did, focused on the first part of the lump sum life cycle that was published last year in October, I think, and the link is also in the presentation. We are going to do in 23 a follow-up, which is then going to focus on the grant management and the payment and the final payment parts of the life cycle to see how that is going more quantitatively.
Okay, we move to the next one. Will you be moving the financial model of Horizon Europe to solely lump sum funding, or do you intend to keep both lump sum and actual costs? Benedikt?
Well, what we are doing so far, and it was already in the slides that Ulrich presented at the end of his slide, we are moving towards more lump sum. We made a really, really little start under Horizon 2020 with close to 30 topics using lump sum funding. From next year, we will have more or less 100 topics that will be using lump sum funding. So we are promoting further the use of lump sum topic. It's extending, but we are not going to use 100% lump sum funding tomorrow neither. That's something that will be gradual, and of course we will monitor. Ulrich just mentioned these follow-up studies that we will do also in the coming months. So that's a development to be followed, I would say.
Yeah, maybe to say that we are really not intending to go to 100%. There is no such planning. We might increase the scope of lump sum funding further, because right now, seen program-wide, even with this first significant wave from 2023 onwards, I'd say we cover probably 10% of the total Horizon budget, maybe a little bit more with lump sums, but we are not in, and we might really go further than that. We might come to 20, we might come to 30%, but nobody is expecting that we will get anywhere near 100% of lump sum funding. Certainly not in this framework program.
Okay, next question. Can we estimate the personnel costs taking into account the potential pay rises, especially in long projects, 4 to 5 years? Who wants to give it a start?
I would say yes. I mean, the way you budget your proposal is the same as in any other grant. In a lump sum grant, you give more details, but the basis is exactly the same. You make a reasonable assumption about the costs that you're going to have in the during the lifetime of your project. And if there is this expectation that you are going to have this increase in personnel cost, and you can quantify that and you can substantiate it. It can probably not just be a suspicion, but if you have data, if you have something to show this is going to be the case, then I think you can absolutely include this. But the basis for including this is no different than in any other grant. The only difference is you give more details, but not the basis for making for budgeting the amount.
Okay, we go to the next one. No financial audits, according to the lump sum model grant agreement article 25.4, must provide information and so on. I think we covered this already, so I just say again that this article is not referring to our standard financial audits. It is in case that there is suspicion of serious irregularities, and then of course auditors or even the legal authorities can come. And now we have a problem with our lights. I hope you can still hear us. It's no thunderstorm in Brussels, it's just the light in the studio. Okay, I think we are back to normal. So again, this is for exceptional cases where there are serious irregularities, and then auditors or even legal authorities can come and of course check whatever is there.
Yeah. And again, I agree, this article has caused some confusion. We will see in the future version if we can improve the wording to clarify the meaning as just explained by Peter. Maybe one more attempt to clarify. This does not mean that you will have a financial audit on the lump sum project, because in that lump sum project, you are not obliged to keep any financial records, so there cannot be a financial audit on that particular project. But the audit could be to check your normal practices. And if in the end, the budget that you put forward for this lump sum are in line with your normal practices, And that could, of course, be verified by an audit like that, but without looking into financial documentation for that specific project that you have, or that you may or may not have on record, because vis-à-vis the Commission, you don't need it.
Okay, next one. How many work packages can be put in the proposal? More than 10. It's a repetition of another question, but maybe we can go to it again. And maybe I start with asking Mathieu to explain how you did it in your project and how you would do it in the next project, in the next lump sum project.
Yes, thank you. So as I said, we prepared ORCID as a Horizon 2020 project, and we have 9 work packages. And for me, it was not a problem. And if I have to do it again, we will have more work packages. I think around 12 or 13, I don't know. But I think it is not a problem for the Commission and for the experts, since the work plan is justified. So for me, you can have 1, 2, or 3 work packages dedicated to management. The same for the communication. You can split long technical work package into 2 based on the milestones and deliverable, and synchronize them with the end of a reporting period. So for me, you can have more than 10 without any problem. That's my feeling, but
Yep.
it can be confirmed by my colleagues from the European Commission.
Reinhard, anything to complement from your side, from your experience, or the one of your colleagues?
Yeah, not really. The situation with our projects was these were really big projects. Maybe they have more work packages, therefore, and they also have to check between different projects that have to be in line, but I do not really know the exact number of work packages. I guess a little more.
Having
10.
had a look at the stats, like the big projects, like Shift2Rail projects, they often have like up to 30 partners, and they can easily have 20 work packages. And this makes complete sense because they are long projects with a high budget, and that's totally acceptable. Of course, if you have a project that lasts for a year, and with a budget of €500,000 and you start to put 15 work packages in there, it's quite likely that the expert will question the added value of so many work packages and if your work plan is really making sense or not. So that's really a question of adapting the work plan to the nature of your project. And also, don't be afraid, experts are briefed about the specificities about lump sum. We raise a point with them that they might expect to see more work packages in the lump sum grants. So if it is well justified and makes sense in comparison to the nature of your project, that should not create a problem at all.
Okay, next question. What amount of pre-financing is expected in lump sum projects? Can it be higher than average for one reporting period? For instance, 70%.
Well, the answer is very easy because, as I said, the rules for calculating the pre-financing is the same for lump sum projects, for lump sum grants and actual cost grants. Now, the standard in place currently is that we have 160% of the average reporting period. And that means for a project with 2 reporting period, the pre-financing is 80%. For a project of 3 reporting period, it's 53%. And we have the for a single work package for a project with one reporting period, is what I mean. We also have 80%, and so on. So it's 160% divided by the number of reporting periods. This is the standard. There is possibility to deviate from that in particular cases, but this is the standard that you will also find back in the general annexes of the work program 23-24.
Yes, and maybe to complement and repeat again, interim payments are not clearing the pre-financing. So in this 3-year example, where you get, as Ulrich says, 50-something% pre-financing, when you come to the first reporting period, and let's say you spend proportionally, so you report 1/3 of the work packages with 1/3 of the total budgets spent, then this would add up for the total payments that you have received to 86-87%. So already with the first reporting period, you would come close to the 90% ceiling. So in a sense, this pre-financing is rather generous and again is not cleared against interim payments, but is pushed through the project. Okay, next question. Is there no financial reporting at all anymore? No more reporting of working hours in timesheets? It seems that is somehow too good to believe, because this question comes back over and over. And I can only say again, yes, there is no more financial reporting. Maybe Reinhard and Mathieu, you can hopefully confirm this again from the point of view of actual beneficiaries, so that people finally believe it.
Yes, it's true. No financial reporting anymore. But of course, when the technical have to report about the work packages that are completed, I guess they also have to report maybe what has been done and how many work has been done. But no financial reporting. That's right.
And I will say it a bit differently. There is a financial reporting, but that is prepared by the European Commission. So that's really much easier for beneficiaries, because you just have to sign the financial statement automatically generated by the portal to your financial signatory person, and that's it.
Okay.
And to be 100% clear, we can say that indeed there is no reporting of your time and no timesheets to be done in the framework of this lump sum projects.
Perhaps just one thing to add. Internally, we decided to keep the timesheet alive for lump sum project by security, because it was our first one, and we decided to ask to our researcher to fill in timesheets, even if it's a lump sum project, just to see if at the end all will be accepted without any reporting, so without any audit. So we decided to keep this internal practice for the first one, and then we will see. But indeed, no financial reporting anymore.
Yes.
It's really interesting.
Same applies within our companies. We keep the timesheets alive.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that. And together with the question, it shows that really everybody still has to get used to this new system and really believe that indeed we are not going to ask for timesheets, not during the project, not after the project, and we're not going to do, so there's no financial reporting, and there's also no reporting on resources, neither nor. So I think this still needs to sink in. I admit maybe it could have happened in the first 1 or 2 years that also our internal staff, our project officers, still needed to get used to this idea, to this new approach. It's a learning curve inside and outside, and we are probably not yet at the end of it, but we can assure you this is not needed. So I absolutely encourage you to give up this practice of timesheets in your lump sum grants. They will not be needed. And in the past, we've heard very often from many beneficiaries that timesheets are an extra burden that otherwise they wouldn't do if it wasn't for us.
Yeah, the last point is maybe important to mention. If in your organization filling timesheets is an internal rule and your accounting system requires this, of course you must continue with this, but not for us. So this simplification is in particular for organizations that do not have a practice of filling timesheets and that have done this for us only in case of real cost projects, to be very clear on this. Okay, next question. What is the data source for the Horizon dashboard for the lump sum evaluation personnel costs? I cannot see any reference. It should be made clear that this is historical.
Yes, I mean, this will be very clear when it's released. Like in any of our dashboards, you will see the source of the data. Effectively, the source of the data is the reported actual personnel cost that each beneficiary declared. So what we do is we have tens of thousands of individual financial reports from Horizon 2020 and now also starting from Horizon Europe. We evaluate them. We look at the amount of personnel cost declared and accepted, and we look at the number of person months reported for this amount. On this basis, we calculate an average monthly rate, and that is going to be made available, of course, in an aggregated way, which will not allow any conclusions for individual beneficiaries, but which will give a good indication of what is typical personnel cost in a given organization type, in a given country. And of course, while experts will not have to the euro accuracy in terms of judging these budgets, they will have a much better possibility to judge what is clearly exaggerated and what is within reason.
Yes, to complement, of course, you are right in your question that these are historical data, but they don't date 50 years back, but they are Horizon 2020 real reported costs. And of course, the briefing for the experts will also explain this, that of course there is no strict mathematical cutoff or relation between these indications and the project proposals that are submitted for the lump sum projects. And as we discussed before, there is the issue of indexation and inflation and so on that will also have to be taken into account in the judgment of the evaluator experts.
And maybe I would like to, talking about how old are these data, Horizon 2020 projects are of course going on strongly. So we receive many payment requests from Horizon 2020 every day as we speak. It's not the case that all these payment requests or these financial statements date back to 2014 and 15. In fact, the very, very, very small share is as old as that. Of course, we include all of them in the sample, but when I say Horizon 2020, this is many, many claims which are from last year or from this year.
Okay, next question, is subcontracting eligible for lump sums?
Well, yes, because it's really simple rules that are the cost eligibles in a lump sum grant are the same cost that would be eligible in an actual cost grant. We don't have different rules there. So the cost, being eligible are the costs that you can use and that you can enter in your detailed budget table in the framework of a lump sum grant.
Maybe to complement this, of course, the same rule for subcontracting applies as in real cost grants, meaning that in principle you should indicate the subcontracts and the subcontractors and the work to be subcontracted in advance, possibly already in the proposal. But if you haven't done it yet in the proposal, which will then become part of the grant agreement, you should do it by way of ex ante request for confirmation to your project officer. And of course, you cannot outsource the subcontractors the major purpose and work of the project. So maybe one of the backgrounds of this question is that in the proposal you propose major work to be done by the famous organizations involved in your project. And then once you get the grant, you outsource it all to some low salary countries far away. That is of course not possible. It is neither possible in real cost grants nor in lump sum grants, because you have to indicate what you subcontract, to whom you subcontract. So who does the work in a lump sum grant is of the same relevance to us as in a real cost grants. So this is one of the rules to be taken into account when we speak about subcontracting. Next question, are evaluators given additional guidance to evaluate these highly detailed budgets? It seems to add a lot to their tasks, or will commission experts evaluate this?
So indeed, this is part of the task of the evaluators to look at this detailed budget table, and indeed we are giving them support guidance for that. We have recently republished the briefing slides for experts, which is these materials that are used to brief the expert in all the evaluation sessions we have under Horizon Europe. And we have added there a couple of slides focusing on the aspects specific to lump sum proposals. And we have a good number of slides on this detailed budget table and how to approach it. So all the EU staff in charge of briefing experts I will, of course, cover also this aspect in their briefing.
And maybe we can also use this occasion here, because we are more than 1,000 participants as far as we can see, to ask for volunteers, experts who could help us with this. So we are looking for more experts in our expert database that have this combination of expertise, meaning having technical understanding of projects, but at the same time experience with running such projects and also with the budget side. So for this part of the evaluations, we are looking not particularly for pure accountants, but for project managers who manage projects, who have big experience in managing research and innovation projects, including the budget and financial side, but not solely focused on this. So if you are such an expert in the audience, or if you know somebody in your organization who would be such an expert, we would invite you, in case you are not yet registered in our expert database, to do so. And in your profile also to indicate that you have this combination of expertise, and then you have a high chance to be selected by us for becoming an expert for evaluating such lump sum projects. Next question. What is the, no, we had this, the data source. Uncompleted lump sum work packages will be paid if necessary. What do you mean by if necessary? I think there was a kind of a sloppy formulation in Ulrich's presentation. Please clarify.
I agree. This is not said in the best possible way. If necessary, I meant to say, well, what I try to indicate is this is an exceptional case. So if this exceptional case arises that a work package is not completed and paid in full, we saw this is the case in 99% of the cases we've seen so far. And the remaining 1% cases, there was still all consensual cases where we agreed with the beneficiaries on this percentage. So we can, of course, have contentious cases, and then if necessary, that means if this arises, we will have a case-by-case decision on what the percentage paid will be. And I think we said already, this happens if really essential parts of your work package have not been completed, you have not done equivalent work, and you have not explained these deviations to us. In that case, indeed, the work package will not be accepted as complete, and therefore also not be reimbursed in complete. This is what I meant here with if necessary. So exceptionally, we will do this partial payment if the case arises.
Okay, next question, subcontracts. If during the implementation of a partner needs to add a subcontract not foreseen in the proposal or to increase its value, is the EC approval needed? So for the increase of its value, no. If the subcontract is part of the grant agreement, meaning described in the annex, and the contractor is also not changed, then it's all fine. If it's about a new subcontract for parts of the work that were supposed to be done within the consortium, the advice is that you ask for ex ante approval by way of an amendment, because this will change the Annex 1 of your grant, and that would require an amendment. There is still a possibility that you report this and the project officer might accept it, but this is then at your risk. So, because the project officer also might not accept it. So the safe way in such cases is to go for an amendment. Next question. Will Article 25.2 be changed? It is still saying the beneficiary must provide information including complete. I think, yes, we had this question. It's a repetition of two questions we had before. Again, this article is not about financial documentation related to your project. It is about the general documentation that your company has to keep according to the national and standard rules. Next one. What is your advice regarding the involvement of associated partners in lump sum projects? That is an important new aspect.
I would say you can involve associated partner in your lump sum project the same way you would involve them in your actual cost grant. Of course, there will not be a lump sum share associated to them because they are not eligible to receive funding. What you will have to do, and this is the same thing as what you have to do in an actual cost grant, is still to specify which are the tasks allocated to this associated partner, and you will have to justify the implementation of these tasks as well in the technical reporting report. But other than that, well, it's really working the same way as in an actual cost grant. There is no specificities linked to lump sum funding here.
Maybe we can ask here Mathieu, because I understand you have in your grant a Chinese partner. This is H2020, so the notion of associated partner didn't exist yet, but I think it's very similar. I assume that the Chinese partner will not get funding.
Yes, exactly. This partner is considered as a beneficiary without any EC funding. So no, it should be considered as an associated partner. And I said by Benedict, it is the same than for the classical H2020 project when you want to add partners without any EC funding. So as associated to the project, you have to describe what they are doing. But it is the same than for the classical ones.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope you will confirm what I assume, that this also means if that associated partner does not complete a work package, that will not have an effect on the payments, because in any case the EU contribution to that work package would be zero.
As far as the activities of that associate partner is concerned, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. We go to the next question. If a work package is completed earlier than planned, is it possible to include this in the first coming interim reporting payment, or do we have to wait?
Absolutely. You can declare your work packages as soon as they are completed. You do not have to wait if this was planned for a later reporting period and you really completed it earlier. But of course, this needs to be convincingly explained in your technical report. And if that is the case and it's accepted, no doubt this will be paid earlier.
Next question. No certificate on financial statements anymore. Yes, no more. Because there is no basis for this. There is no real cost accounting. We can turn immediately to the next one. Lump sum MGA 5.5 says, changes to the estimated budget always require an amendment. Okay, I think we had a similar question before.
Budget flexibility wording of the MGAs that we addressed already.
Yeah, so Ulrich replied saying in a future version of this model grant agreement, we will change the actually misunderstandable current formulation. It's not meant like this. Okay, next one. What happens when a PI changes from institute? Should budget transfer be based on activities completed so far? I conclude that this is a question on ERC grants, because we speak about principal investigators. Indeed, we currently have lump sum funding in the ERC proof of concept grants, but we will in the future, maybe in 2024, also have it for other types of action. So, Ulrich, can you give it a try?
Absolutely, that is the basis. As always, we are not basing this on cost, but it should be based on the activities completed so far. But you know, for the ongoing proof of concept grants, I think this, because they're relatively small grants, I think this is probably much less of an issue. And indeed, when it comes to bigger grants, bigger ERC grants using lump sums, this system is still under development. The rules and the practices still need to be cleared and clarified in advance of launching the first lump sum mainstream ERC grant. So we'll see the details, but the basic principle will no doubt be that this is dependent on the degree of completion of activities. And how this will be defined for an ERC grant, that will remain, we will still have to define.
Next one, do we have to keep the proof of the costs or not? Maybe I hand over this question to our two beneficiaries who have experience with this, so that you give your practical approach to this question. Rainer, do you want to start?
The costs do not have to be proven anymore. There's no need to, well, to keep any documentations about the hours worked, for example, or any receipts. But of course, within the company, you keep the receipts, but you do not have to present them, the invoices, for example.
Mathieu, do you want to contribute?
Yes, same comment. We are keeping record of all the financial documentation for internal procedures. I will say that we are controlling our budget within ORCID to know if we are spending more than the funding we are receiving. So that's an internal business. But regarding the EC perspective, there is no need to proceed to a financial reporting, so no need to calculate the cost and no need to keep record of them.
Okay, thank you very much. We are reaching the end, so let's have one or two more questions and then we have to conclude. Partial completion. Who will decide that it is only partial? Coordinator, project officer, reviewer? Is there a special procedure? Is there a contradictory? That's an important question, and maybe we spend 1 or 2 minutes on that. Ulrich, do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's all of them. First of all, it's when you declare your work packages complete or not complete or partially complete. Partially complete can only happen at the very end, at the end of the project, at the end of the last reporting period. You have the possibility to declare something partial. Before, you can only do full or nothing and then have the possibility to complete later. But at the very end, you can, of course, yourself say, okay, this work package was really not completed, so we, the consortium, declare it only 70% complete. In that case, of course, then the next step is that the project officer will check this and either agree or disagree. The project officer or the commission can, of course, disagree and say, no, it's not really 70%, it's less. Like they can disagree when you declared 100% complete, they can say, no, it's not 100, in our view, it's less. So that would be then a contradictory case, no doubt. And of course, your opinion in this exchange would be heard. You would, of course, be able to justify and explain why, in your opinion, this work package is 100% complete or 70, or in any case, why you uphold your opinion regarding the degree of completion. The commission, the project officer, may, of course, use the help of external reviewers, but this may or may not be the case. This depends on the project size, on the service involved, on the type of program. The use of external reviewers really depends on, often the size of the project and the nature of the project, but that is not relevant here. It's then the commission side, with or without the help of reviewers, who takes a final decision.
Okay. Unfortunately, this will now be the last question we can tackle here. The page limit on proposals with lump sum funding is supposed to be longer than 45 pages for lump sum calls, but not for Horizon CL5, so and so and so.
Yeah.
That's an easy answer. This extended page limit will apply from all the calls that are part of the work program 23-24, meaning that this call you are interested in is still under the work program 2022, so this page limit is not applying yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe I can add, as a general principle, we get your feedback on how lump sum funding is working. We really look into it, and one of the things that we heard is that we need a few more pages. But regrettably, in doing this implementation and in setting up the rules, we have a certain delay. So while we fully agree with this message that we received from the participants, it took some time to actually bring this into life, and the first work program where this is now in the general annexes is the 23 one. That's the reason.
Okay, So to wrap it up, or maybe before wrapping it up, because we spoke about feedback. So of course, there are still many questions that we could not reply now, but we will not throw them away. We will analyze them all. And if there are elements that have to be put into our general guidance, that will be done. Moreover, Reinhard was speaking about an ongoing survey. So if in the audience today we have colleagues who are actually involved in ongoing lump sum projects, please help us better improving the whole system by reacting to that survey. And the deadline is, Ulrich?
We set it up a deadline of 1st of November, but we will send a reminder in the coming days, and we might extend it a bit if we see that we have more and more answers coming in.
So there is still a bit of time, and please give us your feedback.
Well, and of course, we haven't answered all these questions, but do have a look if you have more questions at our revised FAQ section, which you will also find linked on the lump sum page on the portal, or you can go to the Funding and Tenders portal and search for lump sum under the frequently asked questions section. There's a completely revised set of FAQs which address many of these points that we have seen in the questions answered, and I'm sure also among the questions that are not yet answered.
Okay, then rests to me to say thank you to everybody, in particular to our two external panelists, to you as the audience with the many interesting questions and also the number of colleagues participating, and of course to my two colleagues Ulrich and Benedikt. So thank you very much again to everybody, and have a nice lunch break. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much as well. Have a nice break. Bye-bye.